We need someone with enterprise experience for the next phase. Joel said, champagne flute in hand, his smile thin and distant. Around us, the celebration rolled on laughter. Toasts, the clinking of crystal, while my world quietly fell apart. I stood frozen in the rooftop lounge overlooking downtown Seattle, blindsided, as our CEO effectively fired me in the middle of the party celebrating the $20 million contract I had just secured. The same contract that had saved Norvell Systems from collapse. HR will follow up about your severance, he added like he was commenting on the weather, not gutting 6 years of my career. He turned to join the board, leaving me with my untouched glass and disbelief. My name is Rachel Bennett, was rather senior partnership director, or I had been right up until 30 seconds ago. At 45, I'd spent over 6 years nurturing global client relationships, catching red-eye flights, missing holidays, and pushing through migraines and milestones to bring this deal to life. Tonight should have been my moment. Instead, I watched Joel introduce Max Langston, my so-called enterprise-level replacement, to our investors like I'd never existed. I exhaled gently, set the champagne down, and scanned the room. No one noticed. No one cared. The celebration roared on without pause, while I stood quietly erased. Disposable. Just a rung on the ladder they'd now kicked away. I thanked a few colleagues, masking my devastation behind a professional smile. Before dessert arrived, I exited through the service hallway, dodging farewells and cameras. The Seattle night air hit hard, crisp, and sobering. The skyline sparkled above me, untouched by my unraveling. I hailed a cab, recited my address, and glanced at my phone. 3 missed calls from Camille Hayes, the CEO of Zenith. View the very client who'd insisted I lead the rollout just hours ago. She had no idea I'd just been let go. Then the screen lit up again. Camille calling. I hesitated. Let it go to voicemail. That would be the corporate way. Let Joel deal with the mess. But I hadn't spent 6 years earning Camille's trust to start lying now. I answered. Rachel, I've been trying to reach you. Just wanted to say, congratulations again, you absolutely carried this deal. Camille's voice was warm and energized. But something in me tensed. A warning bell. I could feel it. There was a missing piece I hadn't seen yet. Something critical was unfolding behind the scenes. I could sense it in my bones. I've always been a strategist, not just by title, but by instinct. It started long before my first business card ever said director. Growing up the second oldest of 7 kids in a cramped house in Tacoma, I was the planner. When our mom fell ill, it was me who set the medication schedule, looked up treatment options, and explained medical bills to my younger siblings. When she passed away, I handled the funeral arrangements while Dad disappeared into grief. I was 17. Those moments shaped how I handled every challenge that came afterward. At Norvell Systems, I moved fast marketing associate, then strategic liaison, then senior partnership director in just 6 years. I didn't climb the ladder. I built rungs as I went. I wasn't the loudest voice in the boardroom, but I always listened. Better, planned, smarter. That's how the Zenith View partnership began. 6 years ago, they were a scrappy AR startup with brilliant ideas and shaky funding. Everyone else at Norvell saw risk. I saw Camille's vision. I fought to give them favorable terms, arguing with Joel and the board when they called it a waste of resources. They'll never scale, they said. But I knew better. Camille didn't just want to disrupt. She wanted to build. And Norvell had the optical hardware to help her do it. For 6 years, I championed Zenith View from inside Norvell. I stayed up for midnight calls when Camille was in Berlin, flew out monthly to be on site, helped them navigate through legal hurdles and technical bottlenecks. When their AR breakthrough finally came a leap in consumer-grade optics that required custom-engineered solutions, I led the negotiations. I architected the $20 million contract that saved Norvell from a cash flow meltdown after its disastrous product flop. That deal saved the company. And my reward? Getting fired with a champagne toast. Rachel, are you still there? Camille's voice brought me back. Yes? Sorry, I said collecting myself. Just stepped outside for some air. Well, we're thrilled to have you leading this rollout, she continued. The board approved the commitment because of your involvement. My stomach turned. Camille didn't know yet. And clearly, Joel hadn't told her. That's very kind of you. I said, stalling, because now I had a decision to make. Actually, Camille said I just emailed the full requirements doc to your team and copied you. We're ready to move fast. My stomach tightened. She didn't know. And this was the moment I had to decide. Tell her the truth and risk the fallout, or stay silent and let Joel deal with the consequences. I stepped out of the cab in front of my apartment and took a breath. Camille, there's something you should know. I paused at the building entrance, fingers tightening around my keys. Tonight wasn't just a celebration. It came with some organizational changes. What kind of changes? She asked, voice instantly sharper. Joel made the decision to replace me as lead on the Zenith project. I said quietly, leaning against the brick facade. He wants someone with more, quote, enterprise experience. Silence. Then, with a clipped tone, that's unacceptable. I closed my eyes as her words landed. She wasn't angry at me. She was furious for me. We signed this contract with the clear understanding that you would lead implementation. She continued. Your technical fluency and strategic vision are part of why we committed. You're not interchangeable, Rachel. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. Thank you, I whispered. I'm not just saying that, Camille added. This changes everything. Her voice now carried the precise edge I'd heard in high-stakes meetings when she was ready to fight. Do they even understand your role was a condition of our agreement? I doubt it, I admitted. Joel looked like he was just enjoying the party. I don't think he's thought beyond the headlines. Camille didn't respond right away. I imagined her already at her desk flipping through contracts. Rachel, I need to make a few calls. Can we talk first thing in the morning? Of course, I replied, though I wasn't sure where I'd stand by morning. I slipped inside, kicked off my heels, and gazed out the window at the lights glittering across Seattle's skyline. The view, once grounding, now felt distant, like it belonged to someone else. I sat down and opened my laptop, starting drafts of 3 emails, one to Joel, another to HR, and a third to my network. But I didn't hit send. Not yet. Instead, I uncorked a bottle of wine and opened Camille's project document. It was massive pages of specs, deliverables, cross-functional dependencies. Only a handful of people at Norvale truly understood it. Max Langston wasn't one of them. My phone buzzed with a message from Olivia. What happened? You disappeared from the party. Everything okay? I stared at the screen, unsure how much to say. Olivia was loyal, but she still reported to Joel. Before I could answer, another text arrived. Joel's acting weird since you left. The board pulled him into a closed-door session. Something's going down. A slow, cold smile crept across my lips. Camille didn't waste time. Then came a third message, emergency board meeting just started. Joel looks like he's seen a ghost. What did you do? I set the phone down without replying and took a long sip of wine. The board was waking up to what Joel had failed to grasp from the beginning. I wasn't just a strategist. I was the connection. And once trust is broken, especially with a client like Camille, it's not easily repaired. And if you're ready to see what came next, the decisions, the challenges, the unexpected twist, I'd love to have you with me. Hit that subscribe button and let's keep building this story together. For the first time since hearing Joel's patronizing enterprise experience comment, I felt the burn of humiliation begin to fade. The sting was still there, but beneath it, opportunity. Real leverage. Something that might not just restore me, but elevate me. Joel's champagne toast was about to age poorly. By morning, my phone had practically shaken itself off the nightstand. 17 missed calls, 32 texts, 47 emails. All from Norvale's board members, HR, and a few panicked execs. I ignored everyone. Instead, I focused on my coffee and the single email that truly mattered. Time-stamped 6:07 a.m. from Camille. Rachel, I've made my position clear to Norvale's board. Call me when you're ready to discuss next steps. I smiled into my mug. Camille moved decisively. She always had. Norvale's desperation was now a living thing. And I wasn't in a rush to calm it. At exactly 9:00 a.m., my doorbell rang. I opened it to find Alan Mercer, Norvale's board chairman, standing in a tailored suit that did little to hide how rattled he looked. "May I come in?" he asked, tone subdued. I stepped aside, gesturing him in. He sat on the edge of the sofa, like the floor might shift beneath him. "Rachel, I'll be direct," he began. "There's been a significant misunderstanding about your role." "A misunderstanding," I repeated. "That what we're calling it when your CEO fires someone in the middle of a celebration?" Alan winced. Joel acted unilaterally. "The board never approved any changes to the Zenith project." "Interesting." I kept my face still. Joel certainly hadn't seemed unsure last night, champagne in hand, declaring me obsolete. He overstepped. Significantly, Alan said, his jaw tightening just enough to confirm it stung. "We've been in emergency meetings all night," he added. Camille Hayes made her position crystal clear. "Without you, there's no contract." There it was. Camille had gone nuclear. That wasn't just support. That was leverage mine. So Joel made a unilateral decision that jeopardized a $20 million deal. I asked evenly, watching him shift in his seat. "That's a fair assessment," Alan admitted. "The board shares your concern. And yet here you are," I said, lifting my coffee. Why not Joel? Alan's discomfort deepened. Joel's addressing other aspects of the situation. Translation. Joel was fighting for his job. "What are you offering?" I asked. "Full reinstatement," he said quickly. "Senior partnership director, a substantial retention bonus. Plus, you'd lead the Zenith implementation, reporting directly to the board, bypassing Joel entirely." It was a strong offer, but not complete. "And Max Langston?" I asked. Alan grimaced. "He'll be reassigned." Quietly, I took a slow sip, letting the silence drag. Alan fidgeted, something I'd seen before when board decisions didn't go as planned. "I'll need time to consider," I said at last. "Time's limited," he said, voice tightening. "Camille gave us until noon to confirm your role, or she starts legal withdrawal procedures." I checked my watch. 3 hours then, but preferably less. I stood, ending the meeting. "I'll call you." Alan left, looking lighter, like passing the problem to me had bought him breathing room. My phone buzzed as the door shut. "Olivia, is Joel clearing out his office board, forcing resignation?" A second message followed. "Confirmed. Joel's out. Alan's acting CEO." That changed everything. They'd moved faster than I expected. Whether out of remorse or raw panic, the board had done what was necessary. But just as I began scrolling through the flood of messages, offers, apologies, half-baked explanations, a new text appeared from an unknown number. "Ms. Bennett. This is Thomas Blackwood, CEO of Harmona Audio. I'd like to discuss your future. Are you available for lunch today? I believe we can offer something far more valuable than damage control." I stared at the message for a moment, then smiled. Camille had forced Norvale to correct its mistake. But Harmona. They saw an opportunity, and now I had options. A slow smile formed as I read the message. I had options now. The restaurant Thomas Blackwood chose was tucked inside a quiet corner of Seattle's financial district, refined, understated, and clearly built for privacy. The kind of place where deals were made behind closed menus and discreet glances. As I entered, a hostess guided me to a secluded booth in the back. Thomas stood to greet me. Tall, composed, and in his early 50s, he carried himself like a man used to winning and rarely told no. "Rachel Bennett," he said with a warm, confident smile, extending his hand. "Your reputation precedes you. Thank you for making time today." We exchanged pleasantries as a server brought water and took our drink orders. Once we were alone again, Thomas leaned in slightly. "I'll get to the point. We've been watching your work with Zenith View for some time. The contract you closed is impressive, not just for the size, but the positioning it creates." I raised an eyebrow. Curious. "Go on." "Norvale doesn't deserve you," he said flatly. "What Joel did was short-sighted, and the board's last-minute backpedaling doesn't change that." "You seem well-informed," I noted. He smiled. "Seattle's tech world isn't that big, and a $20 million contract tied to a CEO's ouster. That kind of story doesn't stay quiet." My phone buzzed. Alan Mercer again. I silenced it without breaking eye contact. "So what exactly are you offering?" Thomas didn't hesitate. "Executive Vice President of Strategic Partnerships at Harmona." Double your current salary, a significant equity stake, and a seat on our executive committee. I blinked. That was bold, and far more than I'd anticipated. That's generous, I said cautiously. It's not generosity, he replied. It's strategy. We want the relationship you've cultivated with Camille and her team. We want your ability to build complex deals, and yes, we want to keep those assets out of Norval's reach. There it was. The real play. This wasn't just about acquiring me, it was about weakening Norval. And if Zenith View doesn't follow me to Harmona, I asked. Thomas shrugged. Then we've still hired one of the best strategists in the industry, and Norval still loses. He slid a sleek folder across the table. I opened it. 7-figure signing bonus. I felt my breath catch. This is compelling, I admitted, closing the folder. But there are complexities to consider, such as your loyalty to Camille Hayes, Thomas said with a nod. And I respect that. It's part of the reason we want you. He leaned back slightly. Take the afternoon to think it over. We'll need your decision by end of day. My phone buzzed again. Alan's 5th call in less than an hour. I glanced at the time. 11:40 a.m. Norvale's deadline was closing in. I appreciate the opportunity, I said, rising with the folder in hand. You'll have my answer. Back at my apartment, I placed the offer on the counter and stared out at the city skyline. Norval had offered reinstatement direct access to the board and an apology wrapped in panic. It was a solid elevation on paper. Harmona, however, had laid out something bigger: executive title equity and a seat at the decision-making table. The kind of leap that could redefine my career entirely. But there was a complication, and her name was Camille. I had promised her my leadership. I had vouched for Norval's commitment. My word was tied to this deal, and that meant something. I picked up the phone and dialed the one person whose perspective I truly trusted. Camille, it's Rachel. Do you have a minute? For you always, she said. Let me guess. Norval sent someone groveling. Alan Mercer came to my apartment this morning. And Joel removed, I confirmed. Minimum acceptable outcome, she replied briskly. I've also had an offer from Harmona Audio, I said, watching clouds drift over Puget Sound. Executive Vice President. Major equity. It's significant. There was a pause. And if you took it, Camille asked, I'd be asking you to reconsider your implementation partner. New structure, new company. Another pause, this one heavier. Then let me ask you something, Rachel. What do you want? It was the question I'd been dodging all morning. What did I want? Vindication? A title. Or something I hadn't fully named, I'm not sure, I admitted. But I need to decide soon. Then, let me help, Camille said. There's a third option. One you haven't considered. By noon, I had made my decision. I called Alan first. Rachel, he answered instantly. We're down to minutes. Please, what's your answer? I'm declining your offer. Silence. Then, please reconsider. Whatever Harmona's offering, we'll match it. So he knew. This isn't about money, I said calmly. It's about respect. And you're about to find out what that really costs. Respect is something that should have come before the crisis, I said, my voice steady. Not after it. We can fix this, Alan pleaded. Just don't leave us in the dark with Zenith. I've already spoken to Camille, I said simply. She's aware of my decision. Silence crackled through the line. So, we've lost the contract, he asked, sounding as if the air had left his lungs. Not necessarily, I replied. Call Camille yourself. She'll explain the conditions under which Zenith might still work with Norval. I ended the call before he could respond and immediately dialed Thomas. Rachel, he answered smoothly. I trust you have good news. I appreciate the offer, Thomas. Truly. But I'm going to decline. He didn't push. Not immediately. May I ask why? If it's the compensation, we can be flexible. It's not the money, I said. It's the positioning. You're offering me a role where my value is measured by what I take away from Norval. That's not a foundation I can build on. Thomas chuckled softly. Perceptive. And fair. So what's your alternative? Something that aligns with where I want to go, not where I've been. Understood, he said. Well, Should your new direction disappoint, our door remains open. I thanked him and ended the call. Then I opened my laptop and drafted the email I knew would be the most important of my career. Checked. Formal resignation. Effective. Immediately. Less than an hour later, my doorbell rang again. Camille stood in the hallway, a leather portfolio in hand. "Are you absolutely sure about this?" she asked as I welcomed her in. "Absolutely," I said, pouring coffee, "though I know it comes with risk." "The best decisions usually do," she replied, setting the folder on my table. The incorporation papers were crisp and ready. Once I signed, OptiBridge Consulting would be real. Camille explained the new structure. The contract would be revised. Norvale would still manufacture the components, but OptiBridge, my firm, would lead implementation. Independently. "The board is scrambling," she said. "Alan called me right after you hung up." I laid out the new terms. "And they're reviewing the legal language," Camille said. "But they'll agree? They have no choice." I picked up the pen and signed. And just like that, I stepped into a future no one at Norvale saw coming. I was no longer just a strategist, I was a business owner. The risk was real, but so was the potential. Camille reached into her leather portfolio and pulled out another document. "Zenith is prepared to provide seed funding for OptiBridge," she said, in exchange for a minority stake. "It's enough to get a lean team off the ground immediately." I stared at the proposal, stunned. This wasn't just a pivot. It was a complete transformation of my entire career path. "Why are you doing this?" I asked quietly. Camille's expression turned serious. "Because talent like yours shouldn't be at the mercy of people like Joel. Because I believe you'll build something better." And she added with a soft smile, "Because it's good business. We get the leadership we trust, and we invest in the kind of infrastructure we want to see more of." I signed the investment agreement. Just 24 hours earlier, I had been dismissed without warning. Now I was forming a company built on my terms with a powerful client already in place. Sometimes being underestimated is the biggest strategic edge. 3 months later, I stood in OptiBridge Consulting's downtown Seattle office, watching a team of 12 consultants manage 4 active client portfolios. Camille's seed capital had allowed me to attract talent from across the industry, including with special satisfaction Olivia, who now led our integration team. The Zenith implementation was progressing smoothly under our guidance. Norvale, meanwhile, begrudgingly continued its manufacturing obligations under the revised agreement. Their profit margins had shrunk considerably, one of many aftershocks caused by Joel's removal. My phone buzzed. A message from Camille board. "Meeting successful. Phase 2, funding approved, dinner to celebrate." I smiled and replied, "Yes." Zenith was thriving. OptiBridge was growing. The trust Camille and I had built was more valuable than any title Norvale ever offered. A knock on my office door pulled me from the thought. "Rachel Allen Mercer is here." "No appointment," my assistant said. I raised an eyebrow. Last I heard, Allen was still struggling to steer Norvale out of freefall. "Send him in." Allen stepped in, looking years older, shoulders heavy. "Thanks for seeing me," he said, declining a seat. "I'll be brief. Norvale's board is considering strategic reorganization, and they've authorized me to explore all options." "What kind of options?" I asked, though I already suspected. "Acquisition," he said quietly, "by OptiBridge." I couldn't help but smirk at the irony. "You want me to buy the company that fired me?" I asked. Allen winced. "The board understands the unfortunate history, but Norvale's manufacturing assets still have strong potential. Integrated with OptiBridge's strategic consulting, the fit could be powerful." "And the valuation?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "Reasonable," he replied. "Meaning discounted significantly from 3 months ago," I said flatly. He didn't argue. "We've lost key accounts since the Zenith restructuring. Our stock price reflects that reality," he admitted. I let the moment hang, savoring the symmetry of it all. The company that had once dismissed me like a replaceable part was now being offered up for acquisition at a bargain. "Leave the proposal," I told him. "I'll review it with my team." For the next week, the acquisition document sat on my desk as my advisors conducted a full audit. What we found confirmed my suspicions. Norvale was in deeper trouble than Alan had let on. They were bleeding talent, months behind on production milestones and facing a severe liquidity crunch by the end of the quarter. And yet, their facilities' patents and infrastructure held undeniable value. Properly realigned, they could supercharge OptiBridge's operational capabilities. The opportunity for vertical integration was compelling. I called Camille to talk it through. "It's poetic justice," she said after a pause. "But is it smart business?" "With restructuring, yes," I said. "Their optical hardware could complement our strategic delivery. We could offer clients something neither company could achieve alone." "And the board that let Joel remove you?" she asked. "Would be dissolved post-acquisition. New leadership. Clean slate." Camille was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "You've come full circle, from being cast aside to being in control." "I haven't committed yet," I replied. "I'm still weighing options." After the call, I sat alone with the final valuation breakdown. The numbers made sense. The strategy made sense. But something still felt incomplete. On impulse, I opened my laptop and searched for news about Joel. He'd landed a job at a niche startup in Austin. A step down clearly. His termination had dented his reputation enough to shrink his prospects. Strangely, I didn't feel triumphant. Joel had, in his arrogance, handed me the moment that changed everything. Without that moment, OptiBridge wouldn't exist. This wasn't about revenge anymore. This was about vision. This wasn't about proving anyone wrong anymore. It was about building something meaningful out of an unexpected turning point. The next morning, I called Alan with my decision. OptiBridge will move forward with acquiring Norvale, I told him. With conditions. The manufacturing division stays intact, but we're restructuring the entire leadership team. Alan exhaled, audibly relieved. The board anticipated as much. They'll accept reasonable terms. One more thing I added. "Yes, I want the champagne flutes." There was a pause. "The flutes." "Yes," I said. "The ones from the celebration party, 3 months ago. The night Joel fired me." Alan hesitated. "You want them?" "As a memento, as a reminder," I clarified. "They marked both the lowest point of my career and the spark that started everything that came after. Consider it symbolic." "Understood," he replied, likely grateful I hadn't asked for something less poetic and more expensive. As I ended the call, I turned to the window overlooking downtown Seattle. Inside our growing OptiBridge offices, the energy was palpable. We were expanding quickly soon to integrate Norvale's manufacturing assets and finally offer clients a true end-to-end solution. The challenges ahead would be complex, but so was our potential. The journey from that night, when I stood shell-shocked, champagne in hand, felt surreal now. Joel's dismissive words, "We need someone with more enterprise experience," echoed back to me like a joke from another life. In 3 months, I had built an enterprise of my own, one powerful enough to acquire the company that once called me expendable. Funny how the best revenge isn't retaliation. It's reinvention. I looked around at my team some. From my past, some newly recruited, all committed. Camille's faith had been foundational. Olivia's loyalty, reaffirming. And now, with Norvale under our umbrella, the landscape had changed. I no longer needed those champagne glasses to remind me of anything. I had the company, the team, the impact. And most of all, I had ownership. Joel was no longer the villain in my story. He was a catalyst. And like all catalysts, his role was brief but essential. The real story was unfolding now, written in my voice, led by my values. This was no longer about Norvale. It was about the future, my company, my terms. That was the real victory. If you've ever been underestimated, replaced, or dismissed by someone who didn't see your worth, I hope my story reminds you of one thing: your value isn't determined by titles, offices, or opinions. It's defined by your impact, your integrity, and your resilience. I didn't set out to build a company. I set out to prove to myself more than anyone that I could rebuild on my own terms. And when the very people who overlooked me came back asking for help, I didn't gloat. I chose growth. If my journey spoke to you, drop a comment below. I'd love to hear your story, your turning point, your quiet victory, your moment of rising after a fall. We don't talk enough about those. But we should. And if you're standing in the ashes of something unfair right now, don't rush to burn bridges. Stand still. Breathe. Ask yourself not what you lost, but what you can build. Please like the video if it resonated. Subscribe if you believe in stories where people turn pain into power, because there are more voices like mine, maybe yours, that need to be heard. Let's lift each other up one bold decision at a time. Your story matters, so tell it.